Legend of Total War here, and today we're doing another Total War Warhammer 3 Immortal Empires Campaign review, this time covering Tic-Tac-Toe. So Tic-Tac-Toe's start position is Tlaqua, which is not the same start position he had in Mortal Empires, because the cutoff for the southern part of the map was essentially here. And he started by the Jaluk Oasis, which was over here, but that settlement doesn't exist anymore in Immortal Empires. However, in the Vortex campaign, he started at Tlaqua. Your starting enemy is the Leaf Cutters tribe, which is a pretty easy punching bag sort of faction. There's no trick start to this. You don't have a lot of powerful enemies in the area. The closest potential enemy is Manfred von Carstein, and there's a fair few factions that'll sort of keep him in check, at least for the first few turns. So taking these guys out is pretty straightforward. You'll probably have to encounter a full stack at some point, but the early game units that Tic-Tac-Toe is able to get are fairly good at taking out early game greenskin units like Orc Boys and Goblin Archers by just going in and dropping these bombs on them, which we'll get into in a little bit. But yeah, these guys here have got 4 settlements, and once you finish them off, you've essentially got 2 whole provinces, but you will also need to occupy the Sun Tree Glades, which is a ruin. You are surrounded by potentially fairly friendly faction. I do need to make a note of saying potentially friendly. If you ignore these Lizardman factions that are around here, they might declare war on you and they might become unfriendly. It is highly advisable that when you meet the other Lizardman faction, that you try as quickly as possible to establish friendly relations. If you ignore them, they might declare war on you. So try to get a non-aggression pact or a trade agreement with them as soon as possible to ensure that they won't do that to you. They're fairly reliable allies, but they can also be very temperamental. So you've got a minor Lizardman faction here. You've got Teclis, who is actually very easy to do diplomacy with. He actually quite likes you. And you've got Krokgar over here, who, once again, he can be very temperamental. Just join one of his wars that he's going to win, and he'll usually sign a trade agreement or non-aggression pact, which will establish good relations with him there on out. Crossing over the sea, you've got quite a few legendary lords out this way. There's Tehenowin down here, Gorok over here, and Mazdamundi up this way. And there's also Oxyotl down here in the southern Chaos Waste. I don't really recommend trying to meet Oxyotl, because if you meet Oxyotl, you'll probably end up meeting Kairos Fateweaver. And if you want to meet Kairos Fateweaver, my advice would be get rid of him straight away, because the way that AI Zinch works is that they usually use the changing on the ways on the player, but they can't use it on you if they don't know you exist. So my advice is just don't meet Kairos until you actually intend to take him out as quickly as possible, which I don't really advise doing in the early stage of the campaign. Just fingers crossed that Oxyotl takes him out. One thing that you can do to check if he's done that is just hover over the area, and if you see that Zinch corruption has been wiped out, Oxyotl has won. But of course, if you look over here and see that there's Zinch corruption in this province, then you pretty much just can assure that Oxyotl has failed. Now let's talk about Tic-Tac-Toe himself. I think that Tic-Tac-Toe is possibly one of the most underrated legendary lords in the game, and that's largely because I think that when he was implemented, he wasn't that interesting, because a lot of the units that he boosts and a lot of his effects just weren't really properly implemented at the time. So I think that Tic-Tac-Toe is really a case of a legendary lord, like a good legendary lord that was implemented at a really bad time. If he was introduced later on into Warhammer 2's life cycle, I think he would have a more positive reception. But I do think he's actually a good legendary lord, but you have to judge him on the things that he's actually good at and not all the things that he's bad at. So, in judging what he is like as a legendary lord, you can't count on him too much as a melee lord. Even though that's his role on the battlefield, he's just not that good in melee. Like, if he's going to fight a dragon, he's not really going to be able to handle that on his own. He can fight minor sort of flying units, such as like manticores and maybe a wyvern, but dragons are a bit of a stretch unless he's got a lot of support. So his trait over here is Eye in the Heavens, which provides 50% reduced upkeep cost for Pterodon Riders, Ripidactyl Riders, and Coatls, which from here on out I'm just going to refer to as Lizardman flying units, because I'm going to be repeating myself a lot. So this is the area that I think that he most benefited from later on in Warhammer 2's life cycle, because it used to just be Pterodon Riders and Ripidactyls, but when the last DLC came out and Coatls were introduced, it really added a lot of play for Tic-Tac-Toe, because Pterodon Riders and Ripidactyls are like early and mid-game units, but he didn't have a late-game unit that he specialized in, and Coatls are that late-game unit. So now Tic-Tac-Toe has potentially cheap and effective units all throughout the campaign, from early, mid to late campaign, making him viable all throughout. Then he's got melee attack +10 when in foreign territory, so he's able to provide buffs to his entire army regardless of what units he's got. Because here's the thing with a a lot of Legendary Lords in Total War Warhammer in general, is that most of the time they just hyper-focus on one particular unit, and so you end up with a lot of optimal stacks just being one unit spams, which a lot of people don't like. But there are a couple Legendary Lords in the game that just provide generic bonuses regardless of what units are in the army, and Tic-Tac-Toe is one of them. So if you're the kind of person that doesn't want to be shoehorned into just spamming one unit type, then Tic-Tac-Toe is a Legendary Lord that you should consider, because he's got the Eye in the Heaven ability, so every time you're assaulting a settlement, you're getting that extra melee attack. So that'll apply to Skinks, to Pterodon Riders, to Sauros, Dinosaurs, whatever. Every unit, it's going to get that extra melee attack. But then you've also got the Precision Strike over here, which gives you leadership when attacking and melee attack when attacking, which of course stacks onto the other one, providing even more benefits and not isolating any particular unit type. Then you've got Fearless Leader over here, which provides extra stats for Tic-Tac-Toe. Again, he's never really going to be like the Imric of the Skies. Well, actually, Imric is Imric of the Skies. But he's never going to be able to compete with Imric, but this helps to make him a bit better. Aerial Superiority, providing speed for flying units, ammunition for Pterodon Riders, and physical resistance for flying units. Very useful. Ares Finest, providing recruit rank for flying units, casualty replenishment rate for flying units, and missile strength for the Pterodon Riders. And then Skink Commander, providing hero capacity +2 for Skink Chiefs, but also hero recruit rank +4 for Skink Chiefs, but only in the local province that he's in. So that's not particularly useful because you're able to get loads of global bonuses through the Star Chamber building by increasing all the heroes' recruit ranks, so that's just not that big of a deal. And then at the end here, you've got the Drop Sphere of Tepok upgraded, which gives you 2 uses of this bomb, which is fairly good for taking out just a few units of infantry. Now he has one other unique skill in here called Master of the Skies, which sort of replaces the Foe Seeker ability. It's very similar effect. It provides extra 25% speed, but this one here provides 40 extra melee defense, whereas Foe Seeker reduces your fatigue by 1% per second. Now, Tic-Tac-Toe doesn't need to reduce his fatigue, because if we have a look at his equipment, well, let's look at this one first. The Mask of Heavens provides perfect vigor, so you just don't need to reduce that fatigue. Provides campaign movement range +10% and passive ability Mask of Heavens, which provides a pretty sizable buff for flying units. So Tic-Tac-Toe not just boosts his entire army, but also he does have units that would make good one-unit spams, but he doesn't have to do that, I think. Then over here you've got the weapon Blade of the Ancient Skies, which provides control +3 all provinces, passive ability Blade of Ancient Skies, which gives him a stat buff as long as he's flying, and leadership +10 for the Lord's Army. Now, one of the other things that makes Tic-Tac-Toe really good that wasn't present in Warhammer 2 is his set bonuses. Now, most of the set bonuses in the game are fairly basic. It's just like +1 control all provinces, or +25% extra legion points with whatever race you're playing as. Not particularly impactful, but Tic-Tac-Toe's effect provides that +1 control all provinces, but also I think he's got the only instance of a Legendary Lord providing a set bonus to all units in that entire faction. So for all flying units, it doesn't have to be attached to his army, they all get 10% extra speed for those units, regardless of whether or not he's in that army, and regardless of whether or not he's active on the campaign map. As long as he's got these 2 items equipped, even if he's disbanded, you'll get that. So that's something that's very unique to Tic-Tac-Toe. So overall, I think he's a very good Legendary Lord, as long as you're not relying on him to be like Gorok of the Skies. It's not going to happen. Now, if you have a look at Tlaq'wa's overall stats on their own, it's nothing that spectacular. You've got the Rite of Zunki, which increases the campaign movement range of all armies and characters when performed. That's his unique right over here. That's pretty good. You want to use up all of your movement range first and then pop this down, because I think what it does is it just resets all of your movement, but it's not a good idea to be in Forced March first. So this is particularly useful in the case that a lot of people complain about, where the AI armies are just hanging around and raiding and just being a nuisance on the very edge of your border. You can move up to their edge of their movement and then essentially move another full turn and catch those annoying bastards that are constantly raiding your territory. But you can only do that once every 20 turns, but that's still better than what most other Legendary Lords in the game can manage to do. Then you've also got Skink Heroes start with Pterodon mounts, which in Warhammer 2 was pretty good, but in Warhammer 3 that's kind of useless, because heroes will automatically get their mounts without requiring to spend points. And since the Lizardmen through the Star Chamber building, which I'll show over here, which is something that you want to build in every province, since it increases the recruit rank +2 faction-wide, very early on you're going to have access to very high-level hero recruits, which will just automatically get their mount. So basically other Lizardman factions will get this exact same effect, so it's not really unique to Tic-Tac-Toe anymore. Campaign line of sight plus 25%. All characters is definitely good, especially if you're playing on higher difficulties where you have a base smaller amount of campaign line of sight. A lot of people don't realize that on easy difficulty you have like plus 100% extra campaign line of sight. And Pterodons gain the unique battle ability, the drop rocks of Choc Deck, which is better than their regular rocks, but they have that in addition to it, so that's very useful. Now another effect that Tlaqua has that isn't mentioned there is the Pterodon hatchery. You can build the Ripidactyl hatchery here at tier 3, whereas the other Lizardman factions, except for Nakai, who is not settled, they have to build it at tier 4. So this allows you to put this building in a minor settlement so that you don't have to use up one of the precious major settlement buildings. But it also means that you'll be getting coattles extremely early. So you can hit your late game Doomstack essentially really, really early, and you can reduce their upkeep cost by an absolute ton, because with Tic-Tac-Toe you've got obviously the 50% reduced right there, but you've also got the Blessing of Itzel here, which reduces it by an additional 20, and there's various other ways to reduce it even further. So it's very optimal to build those units, but again, you don't have to. So I think with Tic-Tac-Toe, he does offer quite a fair bit of variety in how you want to play. There's obviously an optimal way to play him, but you don't have to play optimally in Total War Warhammer 3 because it is an easier game than Warhammer 2. But he offers, I think, a fairly unique experience for the Lizardman, for an FLC Lord. So I think he's worth giving another shot if you previously wrote him off, because I definitely wrote him off early on. But when I play with Tic-Tac-Toe these days, I actually really enjoy him. So it's a campaign that I highly recommend, largely because I think he is so underrated. He's just not as bad as what some people think. Anyway, that's the end of this one here, guys. Hope you enjoyed it. Let me know in the comments below what you think of Tiktaq, whether you agree or disagree with my assessment as him being an underrated legendary Lord. Appreciate you guys. Don't forget to subscribe, and we'll see you next time. Later, guys.